Hey, English 1301 folks. I just wanted to provide you some information about what the expectations are and the assignments are for week 3. So what I'm going to do is walk through your syllabus schedule just to hit on when everything is due, what's due, and then take you to D2L to show you where everything is and to walk you through some of the posts just so that you don't have any sources of confusion. As always, if you have questions or concerns, post in the Q&A discussion area, or you can shoot me an email. And as always, I'm available from 12 to 1:30 via the instant message feature on D2L. That's 12 to 1:30 Mondays through Thursdays. Okay, so first off, let's take a look at the syllabus schedule. So from last week, it has some information here about what you'll need to read in preparation for this week. So I'm just going to scroll down to week number 3, right? That's where we are now. So the writing journal, as usual, will be due on Wednesday by 11:59 p.m. and then your reading response will be due Friday at 11:59 p.m. Neither of those nor the paper topic will require you to respond to colleagues this week. I do, however, encourage you to take some time to read and respond to people anyhow. Even though it is not a grade, it's really important for us to feel like we are putting our ideas out there and having some responses to that. You should always know that I'm reading all of your responses and thoroughly enjoying them. Y'all are doing such a great job of really thinking through things and working on your writing. But to know that one another, that we are giving each other some time, and some effort to read and respond. So just something to think about, even though it is not a requirement. So then your paper topic discussion, that will be posted, the prompt will be posted on Wednesday as per usual, and that response will be due by Sunday. Okay, and then for next week we have a couple of things, including a video that you'll want to watch, so just keep in mind that that may take a little bit more time, but overall the reading is actually, this reading will be a little bit shorter, so don't worry too much about the time involved in that. I do, however, want you to note that the points are going up for each assignment. So we're slowly easing into higher points and higher stakes assignments because you're starting to understand, what the expectations are. You're asking questions, getting those answered. I'm going to be working on posting the grades for your previous assignments so you can get a sense of those. If you do have questions about your grades, I can't necessarily talk about those via email, so it is something that you'll want to kind of meet with me for office hours. We can set up a WebEx meeting if you want to talk face-to-face. Typically, with what I'm seeing right now, any loss of points in those grades will be related to either strictly following the prompts. Some folks, you're getting so into that first aspect of the prompt, but maybe forgetting the second or third aspects. And then the other things, maybe just the surface level stuff, the spelling, the grammar, that kind of thing. I really encourage you to compose all of your work in Microsoft Word. Take advantage of those spell and grammar check features. They're not 100% perfect, but they are something that can kind of move you in the right direction, okay? So if you see loss of points, I really want you to think about those things. Later, I'm going to make all of those posts available for you to go back and look at so you can kind of connect the grade to the post and see some of the things that, if you were writing it again, you might work on a little bit more, okay? But generally, what I'm seeing is great stuff. Y'all are being so thoughtful with not only your own ideas, but in your responses to one another. Some of you, if it's required or not, are taking the time to read and respond to others, and I really appreciate that. As I've said before in a post or in an announcement, the more you are engaged and involved in the class, the better your grade will likely be. Not only because you are keeping track of those due dates and times because you are on, D2L a little bit more frequently, but you're also really working on writing. You're engaging with one another's ideas. You're seeing ideas outside of your own and writing styles outside of your own, and that can really help in your own endeavors when it comes to improving your writing and writing styles, okay? So I want you to note that those grades are increasing, so the stakes are getting higher, right? So you want to make sure you're really attending to the prompts, answering every part of them, and definitely working on the composition, right? The spelling, the grammar, etc. Okay? Just some things to keep in mind. I'm going to take us to D2L so we can see this week in our content area. Remember, mine looks a little bit different from yours. Everything that you see here will be available to you. The paper topic prompt won't be available for you until Wednesday, right? But don't worry too much about that. As a reminder, we do have Miss Reyes in our course as our wonderful and experienced tutor. So keep in mind that you will see her in and out of the discussion areas, but also please take some time to schedule an appointment with her if you have some specific questions or concerns about either what you're writing now or definitely down the line with your portfolio. So you can find all of this information where Miss Reyes has posted and shared some of her details, as well as some materials and the hours that she's available and how to get in touch with her. Okay, so if we go to week 3, you'll see quite a few things are available. The first is going to be an MLA basics video. This is just where I kind of walk through some of the high points. For some of us, MLA is brand new, so this is just a brief kind of introduction to some of those ideas. And for some of us, it's just kind of a review. We've had some experience with MLA before. I want you to note that that basics video is connected to not only the Purdue OWL website, which I will link as well, but also there's some mention of this MLA handout, and I walk through elements of this PowerPoint. So all of these materials are available for you in addition to that basics video where I walk you through some information. It is brief. MLA takes a lot of time to kind of get used to, and down the road with more specifics, I will share some details and information. There's also a link to our reading for the writing journal, which is McKinney Madalena, where the author talks about using the first person. I need you to say I, which will be a departure for some of us. We've been told time and time again not to use the first person in our writing, so this may shake things up a little bit. And then for our Friday reading response, we have Staj Chick's writing, and it's about food and culture and the connections between those, so really interesting and kind of pushing us deeper into this idea of food as being a topic that we can all write about and connect with, right? So all the materials you need are going to be posted here. And then we have the writing journal for this week, which is connected again to McKinney Madalena's article. So I want you to, as our practice has been, really work to summarize in about 3 paragraphs showing that you read. I want you to show the author's ideas, right? For some of us, we're really getting good at that summary, right? We're breaking the ideas down. We're not skipping any of those major ideas. For some of us, we need to really make sure we're focusing on the main ideas and not just rushing past and having really short paragraphs. And some of us maybe focus on not having too long paragraphs. You want to just meet in kind of the middle and make sure that, in that paragraph range, you're really just focusing on the author's main ideas. What is this author arguing? What is this author's point? Okay, so that's the first 3 paragraphs. Next, in 2 paragraphs, I want you to think about your own writing and experiences. So what have you been told in previous academic writing, whether that's high school or already, in college? What have you been told about using the first person? Oftentimes we're told to avoid it at all costs, right? That it's too informal to use I, right? Or that first person narrative style. So I want you to just kind of identify what your experiences have been. Okay, and then, what were reasons given for you to not use the first person? In what specific kinds of writing have you been told not to use the first person? Often it's science-based or history-based papers, right? And then I want you to think about the fact that for our purposes in this class, I want you to use the first person. I want you to be able to talk about your own experiences when it comes to food, specifically with our portfolio writing. There's no way to do that without using, it would be so awkward to write about your own experiences, but not to say I, not to write with I. The one thing we want to think about is that, in different academic classes, you might be given the freedom to use the first person like you are in this class, but in other spaces, perhaps not. So it's really important in future academic writing that you really ask your professor questions. May I use the first person? Do you want me to stay away from the first person? In addition to all the other expectations that your professor might have for your writing assignments, okay? Oftentimes I have students who, they have these questions, but they don't want to ask. It is your right as a student to ask these questions and to also have these answered. You should have all the expectations clearly defined for you for any kind of writing assignment that you have, okay? So don't be afraid to ask those questions, okay? I want us to focus on using the first person, but not overusing it. We don't want to begin every single sentence with I. That's what my grandmother would refer to as somebody having an I problem. Talking too much about oneself. But when we're talking about our own experiences, yeah, use that first person, but don't just solely rely on it, right? That becomes a heavy crutch that we lean on, and we want to avoid that. Okay, so in this, your response is due by 11:59 p.m. on Wednesday. So think about that, think ahead and do the reading. For the reading response this week, this is where we're reading Stajcik's work on understanding culture, food as a means of communication. So food and culture become connected in a way, and I want us to really think about that because it becomes important in our portfolio writing generally. So I want you to summarize, or in MLA terms, annotate the article in 3 to 4 paragraphs. I'm giving you a little bit of freedom there, 6 to 7 sentences each, because I want you to use some quotation from Stajcik's article. I really am urging you to follow MLA guidelines. I put some links here, as well as reposted the video link, just so that you can just refresh your understanding, or see some examples of how to properly quote and cite text. And then after the summary, I want you to choose 2 important quotes from Stajcik's article. Type the first correctly, make sure it's word for word, properly, worded, not, we want to make sure we're accurately quoting. And then after that quote, have a paragraph that's talking about the importance of the quote in relation to the overall ideas that Stajcik is writing about, and then do the same for a second quote. Okay, so up here, the summary is 3 to 4 paragraphs, and then here you want 2 quotes with a paragraph for each that is making connections overall to Stajcik's ideas. Okay, for our paper topic this week, we talked a little bit about Choi's article and connecting to a food memory and the importance of that. This week we're going to use Stajcik's work, right? So I want you to think about what your food culture is. If you had to define your food culture, what would it be? And note that food culture is a really big umbrella under which all kinds of things fall. So it can be things like specific dishes that are really important to you or your family for whatever reason, specific recipes, thinking about food traditions, right? A lot of us have specific traditions about, maybe a holiday meal, how the food is set on the table, what the meaning behind each food might be. We might think about the different kinds of food traditions we have. So all of that is food culture, and you should define your own. Everybody's going to be different. Everybody's going to define theirs in a specific way. So don't worry too much about that. But I really want us to think about how identity plays a role. How does one's racial, ethnic, religious, any aspect of our identities are connected somehow to food culture. So think of that. So for me, I would say I'm an older white woman who grew up in a military family. So even though I don't necessarily have a specific kind of cultural connection to a kind of food like Creole or soul food or Asian American food or Asian food specifically, Chinese food, all these different things, I still have a food culture that is based on where I've lived. Growing up in a military family, we spent a lot of time in the Philippines and a lot of time in Japan. So my current food practices are based on where I lived. I ate a lot of rice with everything. I love rice. I really enjoy, specific dishes from those places where I lived, even though they are not connected to my personal, ethnic or racial identity. They're a part of my food culture. Right. In addition to, I have specific traditions in my family for a holiday like Thanksgiving. We celebrate Thanksgiving. A lot of people in the US perhaps don't, right? On our table, we have the turkey and the mashed potatoes and the gravy and, all the kind of stereotypical white, American food traditions and meals when it comes to Thanksgiving. But really think about if you have something that's, different. So, do you celebrate a different holiday that you really think encapsulates your food culture in specific ways? Are there, again, specific meals or recipes or ingredients that are really connected to you as an individual? Sometimes it's based on our parents too, or our guardians growing up. The people who cooked for us had an impact on what our food culture is. And right now, our food culture, as college students, may be based on what we have access to, especially after the pandemic. What foods are we able to work with? What foods do we have in our household? So I want you to connect your food culture finally to Stajcik's work. So in 2 paragraphs, connect your food culture to the information you're seeing in the article. All right, that's a quick rundown. If you have any questions, post in that Q&A area in the discussion boards, or send me an email, or meet me online for office hours. Hang in there, y'all. Good luck.